Hello, welcome to Rauta and one of the opinion videos. Today's topic is audience versus the band. Now, let me introduce the whole idea here. What that even mean? Well, first of all, we all know that from an audience perspective, things look very much different than from the band's perspective. Why do I know? Why would I even claim to know these things? Is because, well, having been operated both sides of the table, figuratively speaking, I guess I am kind of bound to say that I do have some experience on both sides of the table, and things look very, very different in so many ways when we're talking about what there is to be wanted, how do you want things to go and all that stuff. Now, obviously, this is way too big a topic to cover all the possible angles with this, so I'm just merely focusing on a couple of these things here. And this idea basically came from a Rauta Discord server conversation where we were dealing with the idea like why so many bands play certain songs. And one of the younger people in the audience were like saying like, hey, yeah, I mean, it's kind of obvious that bands want to play some of their most famous songs and most liked songs. And I was like, actually, that is not the truth with so many bands, especially the older ones. And by older ones, I mean the bands that have been here like for 30 years or more. I guess it also applies to a lot of newer ones. But I mean, as long as you have been in the business for long enough time and you had those tours and you had those gigs, mind you, I never got that far with my bands, but that's a different story. You kind of again get a little bit bored to, you know, play Paranoid, hey, Enter Sandman, you get the idea. I mean, it's very different for, you know, younger bands that say you have been there only for maybe a few years, or maybe you just do those gigs randomly. Maybe you only have like a couple of albums out. So you're kind of restricted what you have to play. And there's the cue. Now, if you do a lot of gigs, but you don't really have too many songs out there, maybe a couple of albums, maybe some demo material, say 20, 30 songs max, you're kind of bound to recycle a lot of those songs, and that can become quite a drag, really. I mean, imagine doing, say, a show even once a month. That gives you like 12 gigs a year. Not too much. Do that for a few years, and suddenly you have dozens and dozens of times when you just do those songs all over again. Now, someone might say, yeah, it's not so bad. I mean, if you've played those songs maybe 50 times, I mean, is that really too much? I mean, after all, you made those songs, so you're kind of supposed to like them. But what the audience might not think about it is that you actually also rehearse a lot of those songs. I'll give you an example of my own band. We kind of got back, you know, as a kind of a comeback, you know, being split up and all, and came back to having this band roughly last September or so. A few months ago. Less than 6 months, but still. And since that we have rehearsed like maybe once a week. Sometimes more than just once the whole gig, but still. We have done them once a week. So by the time we were ready to do our gig, we have done those songs many, many, many times. Obviously more in the past. So it's just kind of like getting back on track. And by the time we were ready to do our one show, and maybe more shows to follow, we have already played those songs dozens of times. At some point you will most likely, if you are in a band, you will find your favorite songs. Like, hey, these songs I like more than these songs. It's not like you have a bunch of, I don't know, pets or, you know, children, and you're like, hey, you're gonna pick your favorite children. Because with songs or whatever do you do, poems, lyrics, whatsoever, you are most likely to have your favorite ones. You maybe like this and that song more because they have, say, better chorus part, or maybe they do have more interesting, you know, vocals or riffs or melodies or just whatever. Some songs are simply put better than the others. So it's not so much like all the songs are of equal quality. So you have these favorites which you're kind of happy to play all over again. and then the ones that are there just to fill the gaps, especially when you're limited to, say, some 20 songs. You maybe do some 30, 45 minutes of gigs, and then you include, say, something like 8, 10, 12 tracks or whatever. Eventually, that becomes like a recycling project. You keep recycling and replaying those songs over again. Maybe it's only that one gig a month or whatever, but you kinda are bound to get bored of the songs. Now especially, let's fast forward a bit. 20 years in the making. You have probably done hundreds, maybe even thousands of gigs, and you've done a lot of those songs. Now, audience might want the older songs. Yeah, I played the stuff from the first album when I got into you. That's why I bought the goddamn ticket. And you're like, man, we have done 10 albums already, maybe more. And you want to focus on more on the newer material because you really haven't been playing that much. Obviously, as an artist, you kind of want to do new songs, not just, recycle the old parts. So by this time, you probably have some, I don't know, 10 albums out. Maybe that means you have, say, 100 songs, maybe 200 songs. And of that whole batch of songs, you are supposed to, pick up that maybe 12 tracks, maybe 15, doesn't really matter. But if people are expecting you to play only the old songs, I mean, it can feel frustrating. It can even feel like irritating. Like, why on goddamn they are asking for the songs we did some 20 years ago or 15 years ago? Because you have played already those songs like tenfold versus what you're doing nowadays. But obviously, the fans do not know those newer songs as well as the old ones because, well, simply spoken, they haven't been around for that long. Say you have some old fans who have been there since like day one, basically. Since your very first album came out and they found them. They loved that stuff and that's why they started to follow you. So you're kind of bound to do them a favor. Just because they bought the ticket, you're kind of bound to play some of the older songs. And with bigger bands, say Metallica or Iron Maiden, that means you have to play those old songs. Not necessary for, Kill 'Em All era, but for bands like Metallica, you probably have to play the songs that got you most famous. The biggest album, in this case, Black Album. So you're kind of bound to play things like, Enter Sandman or Sad But True or whatever. With Iron Maiden, it probably mean Aces High, The Trooper and the like. Maybe not necessarily so much the first or two album, but the kind of old stuff that has been there for like 40 years. So it can really get quite frustrating. I mean, especially if you are already fed up with those songs. Doesn't really matter how well they were received or how much they're loved and all that stuff. Now, things are a little bit different for, smaller bands. Obviously, Dark Club doesn't do gigs, so can't really use that as an example. But if we're talking about, say, something like a kind of undergroundish band, but still a very active band, the same things apply. Maybe not in so big numbers, I mean, maybe not thousands of gigs, literally. But still, I mean, if you have been there since like late 80s or like early 90s, think about bands that were small back in the days. Even like black metal ones, Mayhem, Enslaved, Immortal, etc. Even they have probably like, okay, we've played these songs thousands of times. We don't want to play them so much more, except to just, to give the audience kind of a thank you. So this is one thing where the audience's demands or hopes doesn't really match what the band is doing. The band wants to promote their latest album, but the audience wants the old song, the classics, the ones that they got into. You get the idea. But it's not limited to only what songs are being played, because after all, this is a kind of a trade. So I buy this 20 bucks or 20 euros ticket to get to the show, and I'm expected to be served properly. If you only play new songs, I'm gonna downvote you on social media and say, this band isn't what it used to be. I'm disappointed. I don't buy their albums. In fact, I'm gonna sell them all on Discogs. Maybe fans are not that fanatic or thing like that, but you get the idea. But what also comes through is the kind of a social media pressure. I mean, some bands might feel like, hey, we just want to play the music. We're not going to be famous celebrities. We don't want to put our lives on social media. but the audience, at least some of that. You have to have Instagram, you have to be on Facebook, probably kids nowadays want them to be on TikTok. You have to have clips on YouTube. You have to have your music available. I mean, even if I don't want to buy a CD or vinyl, you have to be on Spotify. Even if Joe Rogan is here, you have to be on Apple Music. You have to be on Deezer. You have to be on Tidal. You have to be on YouTube. You have to be on Bandcamp. The list goes on. Why don't you have CDs available? Why don't you have this vinyl edition? Why there is no limited edition for me? Why that is limited edition and I didn't get to buy that stuff? Where are my shirts? Where are these stickers? Where are the tapes? I want to have tapes. I know you think they're obsolete, but I want to get my tapes. The point here is, what audience once again wants might be totally in very different ways than what the band wants to do. For example, the band doesn't maybe like take too much photos or post even gig photos or whatever, or let alone show their faces on social media. And the audience is like, but I want to have them. I want to have selfies with the vocalist and the guitarist and the drummer and the keyboardist. Not bass player, he can fuck off. But you get the idea. So once again, what the audience wants is very different. And when the audience is not served, they have the right to be, butthurt. They have to be the right to be annoyed once again. Like, okay, I'm just so much going to boycott this band because, they wouldn't take selfies with me right after the gig. Instead, they decided to go to drink with their buddies. They decided to go with the groupies. I know what they're doing. How come I'm... Okay, just enough. Point here is, sometimes audience seem to think that they are the only ones who get the right to feel about this band their own way. And that's the only right way. The next fan, he's not a true fan because he's not feeling the same thing as you are. You are making the eye contact with the vocalist. You know all the lyrics. You know it all the way through. Fuck, I don't even know all the lyrics all the way through sometimes. I'm like, hey, how does this song go? I really need to have to, take at the sheet and, remind me of those lyrics and whatever. The bands actually have to rehearse the things because they might not be as fanatic about their own art and creations as the fans are. So if you act differently than what the audience expects, you're betraying them. So the deal here is, sometimes the fans are obviously right. I mean, they are the ones buying the merchandise, buying the CDs, vouching for you on social media, telling their friends how great the band were on stage, and all that stuff. They're spreading the word. So there has to be this kind of a synergy. But when we go more towards underground, it becomes a very, very different world. I mean, in mainstream, there could be this perfect kind of a synergy. And I'm not talking about those crazy fanatic fans who are just batshit crazy and who have to be, taken away by the cops because they're stalking the artist's doors. I'm talking about the normal fans that go to the shows and buy the merch and like the music and blah, 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 act still like normal human beings. But when it comes to underground, the rules are very, very different. Especially this is a kind of a paradox with smaller black metal bands. I mean, they want to be very edgy, they want to be kind of anti-mainstream, they want to be very, very different, from anormal people. And at the same time, they do make those shows and people are like, hey, we're fans of your music and your band and blah, blah, blah. And they have a kind of these expectations. And that's where their realities don't, exactly match. The fans are like, hey, put your stuff on Instagram. And the band is like, avoiding. It becomes this kind of a cat and mouse kind of a thing. They kind of want the same piece of cheese. Or at least meet each other in a very, very different angle. But they don't want to do it the same way. So it becomes kind of a weird. Bands kind of want to sell a little bit of their albums. And they want to, taste the success, at least a little bit. But they can't be doing that too much or there will be haters which are calling them sellouts. Now obviously this is a little bit a different topic once again and I don't want to go too much into that with this video. But things that may seem like it's obvious are necessarily not. And this whole conversation on Discord actually proved that. Some people expect, hey, they are the most liked songs. Of course they're gonna like to play them all over again, 5,000 times. And the band is like, nope, that's not what we're gonna do, but we have to do because of the audience. Obviously, the artists don't have to do that. But unless you want to really piss off the fans and do some kind of a commercial suicide, well, you have to sacrifice something in order to be liked and successful and all that stuff. Now, I don't want to make this video any longer. This is maybe too long a rant anyway. What are your thoughts? Have your favorite bands met your expectations? Have they betrayed you? Have they been, positively surprising you? Things like that. Let me know with your comments. Let me know with your opinions. Which bands have served you the best, the ways that you hope them to be, and which bands have been the worst for you. You wanted to like them and you wanted to support them, but then something bad happened. Do you have these experiences? If you do, let me know with the comments, and I'll be happy to talk about more of these later on, or at least read some of your comments, because we all have very individual experiences when it comes to being a fan of the band. This is Jerry Rauta out. Have a good day. Bye bye.